What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Appreciate you being here today. Today, we are going to be talking about a topic that I think is very important as we head into a potential Aaron Rodgers decision and as we ultimately go into this season with needing some change for this Green Bay Packers team, and maybe more specifically, this Green Bay Packers offense that was woefully underperforming throughout the course of 2022, in large part because of maybe some of the lack of weapons, maybe lack of fundamentals. The offensive line was beat up at times, but also this was not an offense that was anything like a true Matt LaFleur offense. And before we jump into that, I want to rewind just a little bit, because when Mark Murphy initially had his introductory press conference for Matt LaFleur, on that day, there was something that stood out to me, and it didn't get a lot of attention at all. In fact, as I was trying to go back and find this quote, I couldn't find it anywhere, and it wasn't anything, again, that was like a major takeaway, but for me, it was really important and it stood out to me. So rewind back to Mark Murphy introducing Matt LaFleur as head coach. At one point in the press conference, he was asked what they were looking for, what type of traits they were looking for in their next head coach. And his first answer was sort of the answer that he'd given previously, but he had talked about, the fit within the organization, the fit within the team, and just, kind of a culture fit and how ultimately Matt LaFleur would fit in with this organization and as head coach of the Green Bay Packers. That's an obvious one, right? No matter who they would have hired, no matter what they needed on this team, that would have been a number one. That would have been with any head coaching hire ever for any team. But he gave one other trait. It was one answer, and he gave one other trait that was clearly top of mind for him. And this was his quote that he gave. He said, in the traits that were successful or why they brought Matt LaFleur to Green Bay, his work with quarterbacks. It was important to us, and quite honestly, the way our team is structured, somebody who's going to be able to work with Aaron and help him play the very best he can play is going to really help us win. That's what they were looking for. That was clearly something that was massively important for Mark Murphy in this organization as they were bringing in somebody to Green Bay to get this team back on track to start winning again and hopefully win a Super Bowl. This was the answer that he gave. It wasn't about fixing the defense. It wasn't about, building a better culture. It wasn't about, he did talk a little bit early in the press conference about how he felt the team had become a little bit complacent and they wanted to change up some of that complacency and kind of hold players and the team more accountable. He did talk about that. But when asked what specific traits, it was, he went to the quarterback. The Matt LaFleur hire, in large part, was to help Aaron and to help this offense get back on track, because in 2017 and 2018, the last 2 years under Mike McCarthy, this offense kind of got stale. If you remember those years, you remember some of the frustrating moments with this Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers-led offense, where not all that dissimilar from 2022 with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers. It just seemed like the chemistry wasn't there. It seemed like the quarterback and the coach weren't always on the same page. It felt like there were two separate offenses being run at times, and it just felt disjointed at best. And in 2017, that's when Aaron had his year where he missed a ton of the season, but they were, not that wins are a quarterback's stat, but they were 4-3 with Aaron as a starter in 2017. They were 6-9-1 with him as a starter in 2018. That's 10-12-1, 2 games below 500. In a year and a half basically period with Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback, not 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers. This is back 5-6 years ago now. So that's not an acceptable record when you've got Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback. And you look at 2018 when he was a full year starter, he only had 25 touchdown passes. His quarterback rating was 97.6 at it and had been 100 plus in 8 of the last 9 seasons. The offense had clearly become stale. And quite simply, Rodgers just wasn't playing quite as well as he once was. And to Aaron Rodgers' comment, which is 1,000,000% accurate, even his down years are most quarterbacks' great years, or whatever the exact quote was. He's right. Like those, it wasn't like bad seasons. You weren't looking at Aaron and being like, man, he's unequivocally broken and he's just washed up. But the offense wasn't the same. And what did Green Bay do? What did they want? They wanted somebody who was going to come in and make Aaron get back to playing at an MVP level, back at the level he was capable of playing, and make it so that Aaron didn't have to do all the heavy lifting. Make this offense a little bit easier. Ben Fennell always says, and he said it even before this hire, offense doesn't have to be so hard. The goal was to bring in a coordinator and a coach and an offensive mind and an offensive play caller that made it so that the offense didn't have to be so hard, that Aaron didn't have to scramble around, for 20 seconds to be able to find a receiver down the field, that there'd be receivers open within the nuances of the offense, within the design of the offense. Aaron could stay in the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, use his otherworldly accuracy and just overall quarterbacking ability to make this offense click. That was the vision. Remember, it's worth noting here, they didn't hire a defensive coach. They didn't hire a former special teams coordinator. They fired an offensive coach. They hired that offensive coach with the idea of building a system based on making things easy for the quarterback. And quite honestly, and I know, and Ben Fennell's talked about this as well, and I've talked about it, and this can come across as negative. It's not meant to be a negative. It was ultimately an offense that was designed to make Aaron a bit more of a game manager, a point guard, allow him to work within the confines of the offense, stay in the pocket, not have to be Superman, just make the right read, make the right throw, and continue to the next down. That's what it was designed to be. And you might say, game managers like Trent Dilfer, that's maybe Brock Purdy right now. First of all, okay, Brock Purdy's in the NFC Championship game, so that doesn't sound so awful at the moment. Trent Dilfer won the Super Bowl. That doesn't sound so awful. But that's the goal of designing an offense. It's to make it so that there are receivers open, that you can go through your progressions, go through your reads, stay in the pocket, hit those reads in stride, and go to the next play. And you've got checkdowns, and you've got throwaways, and you've got all different things that you can do within the confines of that. And it's not to say that Aaron can't play Superman when he needs to, and it's, third or fourth down key moment of the game, and the offense, doesn't open up somebody as designed, go do your Aaron Rodgers stuff that you're so amazing at doing. But in general, this offense was brought in to make things easier for the quarterback and let him be a little bit more of a game manager, not have him be Superman. That's smart. That's a good thing. Those are all amazing things. So what ended up happening? In 2019, we saw a lot of McCarthy stuff still. LaFleur kind of met him halfway. And I'll just say this right now. I love, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again right now. I love how Matt LaFleur handled this. If Matt LaFleur came in and went all Josh McDaniels at what he did in Denver and said, listen, they brought me in. I'm the guy. You're doing things my way now. I'm in charge. You run my offense. It would have been, can you even imagine? Can you imagine how Rodgers would have responded to that? It would have been a nightmare. It would have gone nowhere. Rodgers, I'm sure, would have probably rebelled in some capacity. And I would be willing to bet you Matt LaFleur is probably not still head coach of the Green Bay Packers at this point. It would have been an unmitigated disaster. Instead, he's like, what do you like? Here are a couple things I want to integrate into the offense. I want to get you a little bit more under center. I want to get you some easier reads. We'll start integrating some of that stuff, but I want to know what you like doing. If there's things that I want to run that you're not comfortable with, we won't run that stuff. He really met him halfway. And we saw a very similar Aaron Rodgers in that year. I think there was signs of progress, but we saw statistically a very similar Aaron Rodgers that we did in 2017 and 2018 when he was healthy. But, winning cures all. They go 13-3, and the offense was okay to good at times. They still have a Devontae Adams. They make it to the NFC Championship game, and overall, you come away very impressed in Matt LaFleur's first season. But what happened in 2020 was totally different. Remember, this is COVID season, and they aren't able to have all of their normal in-person meetings and OTAs and mini camps and stuff. So everything happens virtually. And for some reason, don't know why, don't know what caused it, don't know what the impetus of it was. Aaron Rodgers said, goes to Matt LaFleur basically and says, I'm all in. We are going to run your offense this year. We are going to do everything your way. And how can we make this work? And it sounds like they had tremendous Zoom conversations of how they were going to make this work, and awesome by Aaron, right? Because he didn't have to do that. He could have just said, hey, we went to the NFC Championship game last year, doing some things my way, some things your way. And, let's just keep doing that. That could have been easy. Let's be just very crystal clear here too. For Aaron at this stage in his career to learn an entirely new offense and new calls and new audibles and new everything, for somebody that's been playing that long, that's not an easy undertaking. That might be like you might be thinking, oh, it's just, a little bit of a different offense, some different nuance. No, that's an entirely new offense. So to learn all of that and to go all in and say, hey, and really to sort of cede everything to Matt LaFleur and say, I'm trusting you. I loved what we did last year. Let's take it a step further and let's do this thing. That was awesome on Aaron, like unbelievably awesome on Aaron. And you might say, you know what, that's what he should do. Okay, but he didn't have to, and he did. And what were the results? It was freaking awesome. 2020, we saw the true Matt LaFleur system. Rodgers was all in. He decisively won the MVP, one of the best seasons of his career. They go 13-3 on the season. They make it to the NFC Championship game, and quite honestly, probably win had it not been for David Bakhtiari's injuries and just some of the injuries along the offensive line, and just some awful, we don't even need to go into what happened in that Buccaneers game, but that team was capable of not only winning the NFC Championship game but winning the Super Bowl that year. A couple things didn't break their way, and they didn't, but that team was awesome. That team was really freaking good. The offense was incredible, and we saw really, truly for the first time what this Matt LaFleur offense, led by a assassin at quarterback, was capable of doing. In 2021, we saw a bit of a step back in a couple ways. We saw a couple of the Mike McCarthy things kind of come back within the offense. It wasn't quite the same as 2020, but we also saw what I would consider a little bit of spamming to Davante Adams. And as I've said this in the past, if I were quarterback, I would spam Davante Adams too. The guy is just that good. But at times, not always, at times, it sort of broke the functionality and the rhythm of the offense because it was just kind of Davante, hand to Aaron Jones, Davante, maybe a toss to Randall Cobb, Davante, et cetera, right? So it took a little bit of a step back. Not anything egregious. And guess what? Davante Adams is really freaking good. So if you're going to spam Davante, if you're going to spam somebody, he's the right guy to spam, right? Offense still works. They once again win 13 games. They get to the divisional round. We don't need to talk about how that ends. Disappointing end of the year, but we still saw an offense that was very successful. And then comes 2020. And the first thing that's worth noting here is this is a different personnel, right? Davante's gone. That superpower, that cheat code, that best receiver in the league can uncover in under 3 seconds on just about every single play, that's gone. And I'll be totally transparent with you. I don't know how much that affected Matt LaFleur's was Matt LaFleur's offense just looking really good in 2020 because they've got the best receiver in football and a quarterback that was playing at an MVP level? Maybe just not having Davante kind of broke things. Personally, I don't think that's the case. The reason I don't think that's the case is we are seeing this offense work throughout the league. You can make an extremely strong argument that the offenses that are working, what do they have? The 49ers, even with Brock Purdy, I don't know, they've got Deebo Samuel, they've got Brandon Ayuk, they've got George Kittle, they've got Christian McCaffrey, they've got the Trent Williams, best offensive lineman in football. They've got a lot of things going in their favor, right? Cincinnati Bengals, they have Joe Burrow, which helps things tremendously, but they've got Joe Mixon at running back. They've got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. They've got a plethora of weapons throughout that offense. The offensive line is brutal right now, at least in theory. They've been playing better than what they probably should be, but overall, you've got a lot of weapons in those offenses. So, you look in the Rams 2 years ago when they've got Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham and the full array of weapons, they win a Super Bowl. No Odell Beckham, no Cooper Kupp, no nothing. Matthew Stafford, obviously a huge part of that as well. Offense with Sean McVay doesn't look quite as great, right? So I do think the weapons plays a part in this, but what happens when things started to go a little bit awry? The offense didn't work quite as well. Instead of leaning in more to the Matt LaFleur offense and figuring out ways to be more creative and find ways to make things easier, it took a very big step back to a lot of the stuff that Rodgers likes to do. Some of the McCarthy era stuff and just stuff from the shotgun, stuff that makes him feel comfortable, less motion, a lot more static, a lot more 11 personnel, a lot more him being able to read the defenses. And it took away from really a lot of the creativity, a lot of the effectiveness, and a lot of the functionality of this Matt LaFleur offense. We didn't see the, illusion of complexity. We didn't see plays stacked upon themselves. You run one play one way early in the game to set up a play different later in the game, right? We didn't see any of that. We didn't see an offense that had a lot of motion, a lot of bunch formations, a lot of all the stuff that this Matt LaFleur offense is built around. And instead we saw static and simple and basic. And we heard Aaron Rodgers talk about that. Got to get back to the basics. We got to be simple. We got to make things easier. We got to make things simpler. That's what we saw for defenses. You're celebrating like you're making things simple on us. And you don't have the guys that are just going to win one-on-one on the outside. Until Watson started to really step up. You guys can't beat us one-on-one. It's simple where we can just read exactly what you're doing and we know exactly what's coming. And like, you're not handing the ball to Aaron Jones. You're not playing under center. Like, we know it's going to be a lot of shotgun. The running backs are going to be like quick running back handoffs that has very little, imagination to it at all. And your routes are very common and basic. As a defensive coordinator, you're like, this is freaking awesome. They don't have a Devontae Adams. They're not giving the ball to the one guy that's a game breaker in Aaron Jones. And everything that we look at from a pre-snap look is as easy as it possibly gets. There's nothing to diagnose. There's no motion. There's no eye candy. There's no play action. It's just simple. It's boring. It's basic. As a defensive coordinator, I freaking love that as I'm facing that type of offense. And we saw the offense was terrible. And part of that was due to decline in play. Part of that was due to not having the right personnel. Part of that was due to injuries. There was a lot going on. But what we really needed to see more of was leaning into the concepts that make things easier, meaning not simpler in the Aaron Rodgers side of things, just like using Matt LaFleur's offense in mind to make things easier for the quarterback to read and just simpler. So we didn't see that. We saw a huge reversion back to what Aaron Rodgers wanted to do and not this normal Matt LaFleur offense that we really enjoyed, especially in 2020 and through large parts of 2021. So I think this is all of it worth noting, right? We saw a step back. We saw like every 15-yard gain felt like moving a mountain. It wasn't Matt LaFleur's offense. And I still believe wholeheartedly that this is an offense that can win in the NFL. As mentioned, Kyle Shanahan, and it's worth noting here that the Kyle Shanahan system and the Sean McVay system are two different systems. They have some similarities, but they are different. But Matt LaFleur has taken from both of them. He has stolen concepts and ideas from both of them. And the thought process is you get this very bright, insane Kyle Shanahan offense, and you use a lot of the things and the complexities that Sean McVay had in his offense, and now you merge it together with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, and it's like, look out, that's what it should be, right? But Zach Taylor, who was on Sean McVay's staff, quarterback's coach, gets hired as the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, running that very similar Sean McVay offense, about to potentially be in back-to-back Super Bowls. Kyle Shanahan, NFC Championship with Brock Purdy as quarterback. Zach Taylor, like I said, was in the Super Bowl last year playing against Sean McVay. These are offenses that work. And as mentioned, you need the players to go along with it. I don't think Green Bay had the perfect set of weapons, that goes without saying, to completely wreck a defense the way that I'm sure Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, Zach Taylor, any of these coaches would like to. You don't have the weapons. It's hard to make hay in today's NFL. But we know that these offenses inherently work. Even with Brock Purdy at quarterback, you just A, need some more weapons probably, but B, need the quarterback to be willing to run that offense as well. So even the Mike McCarthy offense, by the way, you might be saying like, well, Andy, Mike McCarthy, like they just made it too. I know they lost last week, but they at least made it to the divisional round. Even that is more of a Kellen Moore offense now than it is a Mike McCarthy offense. So even that doesn't necessarily hold water. So this is a system that works, and what I think everyone would like to see is going back to more of a 2020 style where Rodgers was playing at an extreme MVP level. And they probably do need to add another weapon or two to the offense to make that fully functional. But I do think no matter what happens, it's really important that you let Matt LaFleur do what he was brought in to do. Run an offense that is proven effective, that has worked extremely well with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Like, this would be something different if Rodgers is like in 2020, hey, we're going to go all in. I'm going to do everything that you want to do from a offensive standpoint. And then it just flopped, right? But we saw the beauty of that offense in 2020 and what it was capable of. Even when Davante Adams was out in some games those years, that offense was still beautiful. That's what we need to see again in 2023. So here's the thing. This could go in two different directions, right? Either Jordan Love's the quarterback, which if Love is the quarterback, we know what's going to happen, right? This is going to be very, very, very much a Matt LaFleur offense, maybe watered down a little bit to make things simpler for Jordan at first, to maybe not go quite all in with a PhD in this offense. But look at what Brock Purdy's doing. Again, you don't have to be a super, offensive, guru in mind and, being able to check out of a million plays at the line of scrimmage. You have a Mr. Irrelevant 7th round pick running the Kyle Shanahan offense in San Francisco right now and running it pretty darn effectively right now to the NFC Championship game. So that if Jordan Love is there, we're going to see a Matt LaFleur offense. If Aaron Rodgers is back, or if he says, hey, I'm going to play this year, and as long as we're not rebuilding, I want to come back and play for the Packers. If I'm Green Bay and I'm leaning in that direction, I'm having a strong conversation of saying, if I'm Matt LaFleur, of saying, that's fine. We want you back as well, but we want you back running Matt's offense. That's why he's here. He's here to run his offense, and we need you to buy into that. Because the last thing that you can have, if Aaron comes back, is another season of push-pull between what offense is being run and this offense that has a split personality and just doesn't feel like a real, true, effective offense. And quite frankly, if you brought Matt in to do that, then you have to let him do it. And if I'm Mark Murphy and I'm Brian Gutekunst, not only am I making that a demand of Aaron Rodgers to say, hey, if you come back, you need to run Matt's offense, I'm making that a demand of Matt LaFleur. Because as much as Matt LaFleur made the right decision early in Aaron's career, or in Aaron's relationship with him, to say, hey, I want to run some of your stuff so you start feeling comfortable and can kind of start getting to know my stuff as time goes along. Going back and then letting him have that more autonomy and run more of the stuff that he wants was the wrong decision. This is Matt's offense. This is Matt's team, and they need to run what Matt wants to do. If you're going to bring in a chef that you think knows all the best ways to cook and has can do that at a high level, then you need to let him cook. No Russ Wilson jokes intended here, but you need to let him go out and be the chef and figure out and decide what's on the menu. And I think that's what we really need to see in 2023, regardless of who's at quarterback. But if Aaron's back, I think that conversation needs to be had. And like I said, if I'm Gutekunst and Ball and everyone, I'm making a very strong, basically demand to Matt LaFleur saying, hey, you got to run your stuff. We can't do this hybrid thing anymore. Run your offense. Make sure the quarterback buys in. That's where we need to be. And like I said, if Aaron's coming back and that's the direction that everyone wants to go in, I think that needs to be a very clear directive as well. 2020 worked, even without Davante. Run the ball, play under center, get the illusion of complexity back, stack plays together, and build a true offense that has a legitimate identity. Last thing here, the pressure's on Matt LaFleur for the first time, really, in his time as a head coach. This is his first time ever as a head coach in his Green Bay tenure. Goes 13 wins, below 500. It's the first time that the heat is on a little bit on Matt LaFleur. And the best thing to do when the heat is on is to lean on what you do best. And for Matt, that is play calling, and that is running his offense the way that it needs to be run. If I'm him, if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I want to see this Matt LaFleur offense in 2023 run the way that it's supposed to be run, whether that's with Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love or anyone else remains to be seen. But I want to see what this offense can do when Matt LaFleur has full autonomy over it. Because I think I saw it in 2020, and it was awesome. It was a joy to watch, and I think they can do that same thing even without having a Davante Adams at quarterback. Thanks so much for joining me today. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack-O.